Richard Dawkins, Rory Sutherland, two of my favourite people, and two people that disagree on something really crucial, and that is the truth. Not exactly disagreeing on what the truth is, but whether or not it's useful in all situations.
I believe in the truth, and I think that if there is a supreme creative intelligence behind the universe, then that is the most exciting scientific fact of all. It means it's a totally different kind of universe. And so I think it's a very, very important theory if it's right. And so,
Yes.
so I think it's, because I think it's wrong,
Yeah, sure.
I think it's important to argue about it.
Now, in contrasting that with Rory Sutherland, he has a completely different view on the effects of the truth in everyday society and how religion might play into that.
Religions have and had significant beneficial effects. Okay, if you're purely a consequentialist, if you're a Richard Dawkins sort of truth-obsessed person, okay, you would argue that believing something that is untrue is somehow failing. Okay, now if you're a consequentialist, you'd say there are many, many heuristic beliefs we hold, or rules of thumb, or ways of seeing the world. For example, imagining that you're going to be judged in the afterlife, which may or may not be true, but the belief probably leads to better behavior.
A few years ago, I hosted Richard Dawkins Live in Australia, and I asked him this one question, which was about the idea of placebos. We understand very well the powerful effect of placebos. Placebos can make somebody feel better just by the psychological effect they have of the person thinking that whatever they're taking is actually having an effect. The effect of whatever they're taking is not evidence-based, and it may not even be true. And yet, as a consequentialist, it still actually works.
The placebo effect has a lot of hard evidence supporting its efficacy. And when we think about it in the medical context, you know, there are things where studies that have found that if pain tablets are yellow, they're more effective. If people pay more money for them, they're more effective. Is this sort of dangerously close to being able to justify pseudoscientific medicine?
It's a very good point, and it's a point that my colleague Nick Humphrey has made. Homeopathy, of course, doesn't work. It can't work. But nevertheless, the placebo effect is real. And so if you go to a homeopathic doctor who prescribes you nothing, nevertheless, you believe, because the pill is yellow, whatever it is, you believe that it works. And so it does work. That's what the placebo effect does. That's why medical research is done with a placebo control. But now you've raised this point. If the placebo effect does work, then maybe homeopathy can be justified because, after all, real doctors don't have the time to devote a whole hour to talking to a patient. 10 minutes and you're out. Whereas a homeopathic doctors have nothing better to do, and so they give you a nice long time, and it's a nice kind voice talking to you and saying, yes, I'll give you these yellow pills and they'll make you better. And the placebo effect kicks in. So maybe that's how it, well, and I'm sure to the extent that that's how homeopathic medicine does work, if it works, it is a placebo effect. And maybe it can be justified.
Dawkins had to concede this, I think, on stage to a certain extent when we talked in Australia, but he remains a steadfast advocate for the truth at all times. Case in point.
There are people who say, oh, why bother and just get on with science and don't. I mean, it is an important question. It's an important scientific question, and it's not to be ignored. It's not to be just sort of swept under the carpet. You've got to think about whether it's true, and that means arguing with the people who think it is true.
So in reality, I'm actually sympathetic to both of these views. I do think that there is something to be said for the truth. And I think the truth and digging down to what the truth is can actually help build a better moral framework than is offered by anything superstitious or religious. Nonetheless, I also agree with Rory that what is the problem if believing XYZ leads to a positive outcome?
I made the point about religion, that if you believe certain things and they lead to beneficial behaviors, what's the problem? Okay, if we're being effectively interested in the consequences. I also asked the question, and I find Dawkins very strange, because I found the selfish gene one of the most amazing pieces of polemic, and I mean this in a good way. One of the most persuasive things I've ever read, which I thought was extraordinary in kind of reorienting the way I looked at the world. But I don't understand his animus to religion, because my argument would be, well, evolution doesn't care about truth. It only cares about consequences, okay? And if certain beliefs are advantageous to the survival and growth of particular groups, then it's not necessary to see those things merely as memes. They actually serve an evolutionary purpose. And you can quite easily see why a tribe which were capable of believing in, for example, divine providence or whatever it may be, would be more successful. At a very commercial level, one of the most successful commercial groups in history have undoubtedly been English Quakers. And they had a belief that your word was your bond. They didn't swear oaths. They wouldn't really sign legal documents. If two Quakers wanted to do business, they'd go, I would like to buy your chocolate factory. How much would you like? And the other Quaker would say, I'd like 20,000 guineas. And the other person would say, done. That was the end of it. Now, if you think about it, an entity which doesn't require lawyers, because everybody in all their interpersonal dealings operates within a sphere of complete trust, has a huge economic advantage.
Yeah.
But I remember Robert Trivers, who was really the originator of the sort of gene-centric view of evolution. I said to him, look, whether this thing is true or not is not relevant. If you're a proper empiricist, what you do is you take 5 or 6 islands, okay, and you'd put 50 Mormons on one island, and you put 50 hand-picked evolutionary biologists, okay, on another, and then you might put 50 people from another religion on another one. And the only question to ask is which one is still functioning as a society in 30 years' time? And Robert Trivers' answer was, my money's on the Mormons.
Interesting.
Okay, basically.
I think the problem that Rory has to contend with this particular worldview is that if you're willing to take the positive effects of religion, you're going to have to take the negative effects of it as well. And there are a few of those. I think the thing that Richard has to concede is that the truth isn't always the best for everyone. I used to think of this as a kind of dichotomy between, do you think too much of society or too little of society? For you to think too much of society might be to say that the truth will set everyone free. Well, the reality is that it probably won't, and a lot of people can't actually handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth!
Thank you, Jack. But then I think that it can be often insulting to assume that some people need to be pandered to with various falsehoods and lies in order for them to actually lead a better life. This is going to be a mixed bag, and there's no straight answer for it. I think the balance is that the truth is useful in many instances, but there are always going to be situations where humans benefit from being lied to. And that's an uncomfortable truth. I used to really detest things like homeopathy and other non-evidence-based forms of medicine, and I still do, don't get me wrong. But I think if somebody takes those things and they do feel better and there is actually a result, then what's the problem? Well, I don't think it should be publicly funded. That's what I think the problem is. But I think people should be free to believe whatever they think works, provided it doesn't cause any detriment to anyone else. And that's why religion fails to actually compete in this arena. Because a lot of religion may be beneficial for a lot of people, but it's often to the detriment of others. And when it begins to encroach on other people, that's when I stop having time for it. So yes, there is a space for things that are not true and psychological effects and hacks. I think those things need to be understood in the way that, Rory is so good at helping us know what we should understand about human psychology. But I think I take issue when it starts to be leveraged for evil. But I'd be keen to hear what you think. Are you somebody who is obsessed with the truth? Can we really know the truth? Or are you happy to live with ignorance is bliss? And that's all from me.